if the parts of you that you've been avoiding are the very ones that could unlock your deepest truth? The science of your soul and shadow goes beyond spirituality. Shadow work is not just healing, it's how you discover your life's purpose. In this video, I help you understand your shadow self, uncover its purpose, and give you practical tools and tips to create balance and alignment in your life. There are things you need to know about shadow work in order to truly understand this phenomenal healing experience. So let's talk about what the shadow even is. A psychologist, Carl Jung, was the first one to coin the shadow with the shadow. So what is it even? I'm going to read his actual definition and then I'm going to elaborate from there. Carl Jung describes the shadow as, the shadow is that hidden, repressed, and for the most part, inferior, guilt-laden personality. So what does that even mean? The shadow is the part of us that tends to be us who's just been repressed, told no, forgotten, and just told to shut up one too many times. If you're me, sometimes my shadow looked like the person that was really excited about things but had to shut up because I was too much for people. If you're other people, it could be something along the lines where you've been told, no, you can't be an artist. No, you can't be a doctor. No, you can't go out to New York to become an actor. And you just chose not to do those things because people told you and that part of you still inside of yourself. Another thing that's also hidden in our shadow is our emotions. Guilt, fear, anxiety, those all stem from our shadow. So we tend to associate our shadow with negative things about ourselves, but that's not even what it is. So let's really get into where the shadow came from and when it started to form. Because surprisingly, your shadow started to form when you were 2. I'm not even kidding. This is honestly when the shadow starts. Why does the shadow start forming when we're 2? Because when we're 2, that's when we really start wanting things. That's when we as kids go, ooh, I want the candy, or ooh, I want to touch the hot stove, or ooh, I want to go play outside in the snow, not understanding that I can get frostbite in my flip-flops and tank top. Okay, yeah, so this is where we start really wanting to do things and then we get told no. And that's when the shadow starts. We get told no, we get told we can't do the things that we want, and then it kind of just evolves from there. So it starts when we're 2, and then as we get older, 3, 4, 5, it's one of those things where it's like, don't talk too loud. Chew with your mouth closed. We don't joke about those things. You can't say that to people. So then we start getting an identity. We start understanding, oh, this behavior is not acceptable, but this behavior is acceptable. When you were a kid, did you hear people tell you something along the lines of, oh, you're too clever for your own good? Or something I heard a lot, you're a kid, you don't know any better. Those type of off comments also resonate with a person in a way that they kind of hold on to them as truth. And that truth becomes, again, the shadow. It becomes a part of us that we just take in and we say, okay, I don't like this, I'm not going to deal with it, so I'm going to put it over here. And that's kind of what the shadow is. It's just the parts of us that we've never wanted to deal with, and it's the parts of us that have been hurt, sad, repressed, looked down upon, and when we become a teenager, when we become an adult, we think ourselves that we're no longer that person, but we don't actually work on healing that parts of ourselves. So these events and these things are what continue to help build the shadow. And the shadow is just, again, the part of us that we don't talk about, we kind of keep repressed, we hold dear to us, but at the same time, as we grow older, we find out we don't really appreciate it as much as we should. The shadow is just a natural part of your life. It's part of you that's always going to be there. I don't care how great your parents were. I don't care how great your upbringing was. You're always going to have a shadow part of you because there's always going to be a part of you that was told no at something that you wanted. There's always going to be a part of you that was slightly repressed in the moment, even if it was for the better thing. The example about the 2-year-old who wanted to go out play in snow in flip-flops and a tank top. Is that really what they should be doing? No, it could really cause them some serious health issues. So the kid know that? No, they don't understand that, so it just goes through the shadow. Right now, I would like you to pause the video, just so that way you can reflect on your own life and see what has contributed to your shadow. What parts of yourself have you just forgotten, repressed, or let go of, and not even thought of, that is still living in your own shadow? Now that you've paused the video and came to understand who your shadow is, understand that this is just a small portion of unlocking your true potential to getting to work with your shadow. Now we need to rid you of those limiting beliefs that keep you from truly working with your shadow. So what's the first limiting belief that we absolutely need to get rid of? Your shadow is not evil. This is the biggest one and the very first one we need to talk about, because here's the thing. Your shadow is not evil. Darkness is not evil. You literally have to have 2 sides of polarity. You have to have light and you have to have dark. Darkness is not evil. Are you telling me that the nighttime is evil and the daytime is the good time? That's just nonsense. That's literally silly. Because the truth is, nighttime is just as important as the daytime. Your body physically needs to sleep in order to have a normal function. So, are you only good when you're awake and you're evil when you're sleeping? I don't think so. Understand that your shadow is just that sleeping side of yourself that wants to be known, that wants to be heard. So, shadow is not evil. Darkness is not evil. Why does polarity matter? Polarity is important because it's just a natural state that we all are. Honestly, think about a magnet. A magnet has a north pole and a south pole. I don't care how many times you chop that magnet, it's still going to have a north pole and a south pole. And that's no different than us. I don't care what you want to call the light being and the dark being. The light being can be the south pole, the dark being can be the north pole, vice versa. Pick your pick. Doesn't matter. The thing is, though, you can't just love one half and not the other, because it's still the same thing. If you decide to love the north pole of that magnet and not the south pole of that magnet, that's silly. It's still the same magnet. So the important thing to understand is your light self and your dark self are just two of the same you. So first off, let's stop hating this part of ourselves that is such essential to us, because it's literally just part of who we are and we can't be separate from it. Your shadow is actually love. Your shadow actually loves you so much that it really wants you to understand things. Your shadow is emotions. Your shadow is pain. Your shadow is all those parts of yourself that you'd rather forget because they kind of hurt. But here's the thing. You as a person cannot grow. You as a person cannot fully heal until you allow yourself to integrate those things that have happened to you, work through them, and let them go. Right now, your shadow is just holding all that for you, saying, hey, I'm here and ready for you. I'm ready to help you heal. I'm ready to love you. I'm ready to give you this so that way we can work through it and we can grow as a person. Your shadow has never forgotten who you are. If you've been told that you can't be who you want to be because you had to follow your mom and dad's path, or because society wouldn't let you, or because that's too scary, we don't want you to take that risk, your shadow has never forgotten that longing, that desire to be that person that you want to be. So if you're someone that wanted to be a singer and you were like, no, you have to be a doctor, your shadow hasn't forgotten that you love to sing and that you have a great voice and that it's something that still stirs an excitement in you. And the hard truth is, most of us only recognize our shadow when our shadow says, all right, I've had enough. Because the truth is, you can only deny yourself so long before part of you just feels so uncomfortable, so disconnected, and that's when we recognize our shadow. We recognize our shadow in breakdowns, or lash outs, or when we're triggered, but our shadow is just so much more than that. It's just in those moments, that's probably the only time you actually listen to your shadow. Understanding that your shadow is a fundamental part of yourself is super important, but we also need to talk about the shadow's purpose and how we can learn from it. Now let's talk about what a normal day looks like. I'm going to be using my notes for this one because I have a series of events that are very relatable and I want to make sure I say them all correctly. So bear with me here. Alright, everyone starts out by waking up. You wake up either to yourself, an animal, a partner, a child. We all start with waking up. That's unavoidable. When you wake up, you have your normal routine, whatever that is. It's your routine that you make coffee, that you brush your teeth, that you eat, that you get up and go out the door because you're late for work. Sometimes that's a routine. We all wake up, we all have a routine. At some point, we have to start interacting with people. This is when our shadow probably starts to come out with the most. So, when you start your interactions with people, let's start with your boss criticizes you for missing a deadline. Or you and your spouse get into a disagreement about the house chores. Or your mom and dad don't think you're living up to your fullest potential. In this moment, you have a way to respond. In this moment, you're probably going to respond in the way that you've always responded if you haven't worked with your shadow. So what does it look like when you're working with your shadow? Well, after the moment, your shadow wants you to help harmonize. What your shadow is trying to help you understand is that you didn't tell your boss that you were sick that week. You and your partner weren't really fighting over the household chores, but instead, you're both hurt because you feel like they haven't been emotionally supporting you and you feel distance from them. You and your parents don't see eye to eye, and you just want their approval. So these are what your shadow is trying to tell you. In these three examples, your shadow is trying to help you understand these things. It's what your shadow is wanting you to say. It's what your shadow is wanting you to actually express. And this is where, if you're working with your shadow, you can actually conveniently tell this to the person. If you're not working with your shadow, this tends to actually come up in a blow up. So, after we've actually talked to our shadow, after that moment, what does it look like after that? At work, you need to start implementing boundaries instead of being that yes person. That's what it looks like when you've worked with your shadow. You realize that you're just being taken advantage of. You need to have that difficult conversation with your spouse so they understand why you're hurting. That's what your shadow helps you do. because having that difficult conversation with your spouse is going to be difficult in that moment, but it's going to make things so much better after the fact. You don't need your parents' approval. What matters is that you love yourself. This one's a hard one to take in depending on what age you are, but even no matter your age, you always still want your parents' approval and love. That is an example of what shadow work looks like in 3 different ways. Shadow work is literally being confronted with something, and then you responding the way you probably always have, and then realizing in that moment, either in that moment or shortly after, why didn't I tell them the truth? Why wasn't I honest? Or is something I can do for myself to make the situation better for myself? Or because when you make it better for yourself, you also give yourself the ability to make it better for the other person. Shadow work also really involves being honest with ourselves. And this is something that I know we can struggle with, especially as an adult. We just want to pretend like everything's fine, but your shadow knows you're not fine, and you can't lie to your shadow. I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. Your shadow is actually smarter than you. So what does it look like when we start ignoring our shadow and we don't do the shadow work? Outbursts, fits of rage, unhealthy behaviors such as binge eating or not eating, procrastination or perfectionism, poor coping mechanisms such as drinking, avoidance, isolation, recklessness, or self-harm, addictions such as TV, video games, going to the gyms for 3 hours a day, disconnection, such as sleeping issues, both too much or not enough, oversharing or completely shutting down, emotional numbness and judgy behaviors, escapism, overworking, blaming, playing victim, passive-aggressive, or an all-or-nothing mentality, physical problems, headaches and physical aches that seem to have no cause, sleep disruptions, chronic stress, anxiety and depression, guilt, resentment, and bitterness. These are all decisions we have made, myself included, that lead and create more disharmony in our lives. I'm not gonna lie, in my early 20s, I took to the bottle. I numbed myself with drinking and alcohol. Am I proud of it? Nah. But at the same time, it is what it is. I learned now I actually have healthy coping mechanisms when things bother me or if they get too tough. But you know what? We all have to learn in our own way. Now that you can identify your shadow and how you've seen it in your own life, let's talk about these next 2 transformational tips. The first tip is how the shadow speaks. What is the shadow's language? Well, the first way it speaks is through emotions. Honestly, emotions is the shadow's #1 way to get in touch with you, to talk to you, to get you to listen, for you to understand anything. When you experience any emotion, your shadow is there. And it doesn't just have to be the hurtful emotions. Your shadow is there when you experience joy, bliss, happiness. Because guess what? It's enjoying those emotions too. It's happy to be in those places. It wants more of that. But your shadow also holds and carries all the pain and negativity that has happened in your life and how you felt in those things, because it wants you to remember those things as well, so that way we never have to experience them again. Yes, your shadow wants you to work through these things so your shadow and you never have to experience that pain again. Other way that your shadow can talk to you is by reoccurring memories. A lot of times when your shadow is trying to get you to work through something, it'll be like, hey, remember that really embarrassing thing that happened in 4th grade? Hey, that embarrassing thing that happened in 4th grade. And to you, it's just an obnoxious thing that you're dealing with, that you don't want to have to remember that thing. But honestly, the truth is, your shadow's saying, hey, we're in a safe place right now. Can we please unpackage this? Like, can we just deal with it? I'm tired of holding it. I don't like it anymore. Can we just work through whatever this thing that happened in 4th grade is so we can move on? And if you just keep ignoring and keep repressing it, guess what? It's going to keep reminding you of it. But if you literally just give yourself some time, maybe if you're, at home just sitting on the couch doom scrolling, be like, okay, we'll do the thing that happened in 4th grade. What do I need to know about it? Let yourself work through the embarrassment, let yourself work through the sadness, whatever it is in that moment, and just allow yourself to deal with it. Another way that your shadow speaks to you, and this is probably the most common way that people understand how shadow works, is through triggers. Now here's the thing, when you're triggered, that's your shadow saying, hey, something's about to happen, or hey, this has happened in the past, we're about to get hurt. That's literally just like, ooh, that's literally your shadow saying, hey. But here's the thing, just because you're triggered by something doesn't mean that the other person's at fault, doesn't mean that you're gonna get hurt. All it means is that, hey, this is something that we need to work through. Another way that your shadow can talk to you, a lot more subtle ways that your shadow works with you, is if you have like a song repeating in your head over and over again. Maybe your shadow wants you to understand that, hey, this line really means something to us and you need to pay attention to it. Or if you're a person who reads books and all of a sudden a passage of a book comes to you. Or if you're a TV movie person, all of a sudden you're, seeing a scene from a TV or your favorite part of a movie coming to your head. there's something about that you probably need to pay attention to. So, go ahead, ask your shadow, why am I seeing this? And allow yourself to see where it goes from there. Everything we've talked about and everything that we've learned about the shadow up to this point is important, but none of that absolutely matters unless we do this very last and the most important thing, and that is actually working with your shadow. So, how do we work with our shadow? First and easiest way, to journal. I know I talk about journaling a lot, but honestly, it is the easiest way to talk and work with your shadow. Because here's the thing, when you're feeling emotions and you don't really understand how you're feeling it, what's the best way to figure it out other than by journaling it out? Also remember that journaling doesn't have to be a whole Dear Diary experience. Journaling is whatever you need it to be in that moment. So if you start talking about, how your boss berated you and how aggravating your day was at work, and then all of a sudden now you're talking about when your mom used to pick on you about not getting your homework done as quickly as your sibling, well, okay, allow that natural flow to happen, because guess what? What's probably at the core of the issue has more to do with this childhood memory than the actual thing that you're thinking about that day. So allow yourself to just get it out, to journal, but then once you journal about it, also see what you can do differently to implement things for yourself that makes your life better going forward. Another way to work with your shadow is meditation. Now, this one is one that's going to involve you actually knowing how to meditate on at least semi-regular basis, and the reason why I'm saying this is because this type of meditation involves visualization. So a way that you can work with your shadow in meditation is by literally imagining your shadow portion of you sitting at a bench in a park somewhere. I like to be at a park when I talk to my shadow, and literally having a conversation in your meditation with your shadow. Allow your shadow to show you whatever it needs to show you, and be open to receiving whatever it has to tell you. The thing about meditation, though, is making sure that you're doing this in a safe space, and give yourself the ability to put this in a time setting. Because if you haven't been someone that's worked with your shadow ever, or if you've been ignoring your shadow could have a lot to say to you, and it could be so much information that it might be overwhelmed. So maybe just set aside 20 minutes and put a timer on, so that way after that 20 minutes you can thank your shadow and you can move on with the rest of your day. Another easy way to work with your shadow is by literally talking to it. Yeah, and I kind of mean talking to yourself. I'm not even kidding. So here's the thing, when something happens, say I'm driving and someone cuts me off and all of a sudden I get a real flare up. And I'll be like, okay, the cutoff wasn't even that bad. What is going on? And then my shadow will be like, well, it was really inconsiderate. I'm like, yeah, so what? Maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they didn't see me. We've done stupid stuff like that in our past. Why are we holding this against the driver? And then I will literally hear myself say, or in my head, I'll hear it and be like, well, right now, we feel like a lot of people are being inconsiderate about us. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're not putting in boundaries. So it's literally a conversation I'm having with myself. No one's around. I don't really care if people think I'm crazy while we're driving. This is just me talking to myself. For anyone else knows, I could be talking on my Bluetooth or just singing a song. Another way to work with your shadow, creative expression. I've talked about this in a few of my videos, but I really haven't talked about it recently. And remembering what creative expression is, it's literally you just giving yourself the chance and willingness to be able to create for the purpose of creation and processing emotion. So when I'm saying creative expression to work with your shadow, the cool thing about this is you don't have to actually remember anything. You don't have to think about anything. You just allow yourself to do it in the moment. I like to do it when I'm feeling overwhelmed, aggravated, or frustrated and flustered, because the thing is if I can go ahead and just take some colored pencils to paper and I can just draw scribbles all over the thing and just make some really abstract art, because that's the most base of my talent in art is just really abstract scribbles. The thing is I'm working through emotions, I'm processing those emotions, and I'm doing it in an active way. So am I having an understanding of exactly what's going on? No. But am I allowing myself to work through those emotions and actually get it out and just have it be done? Yes, because part of working with our shadow, the hard part that we don't really remember and we kind of forget about when we do shadow work, is actually allowing ourselves to experience the emotions and work through the emotions. So if you're doing that in a creative way, you're still doing shadow work, even if you don't have a clear understanding or, just answer for why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and that's okay. I really also want to bring to your attention that your shadow is honestly your friend. Your shadow is your biggest cheerleader. Your shadow is the one that wants you to succeed more than anyone, because the shadow is you. It's just the shadow is the only part of you that remembers your true authenticity and remembers exactly who you are and who you've always meant to be. So when you are putting your shadow down, you're putting yourself down. But when you're working with your shadow, you're working with yourself through a loving way, so that way you can be the best version of you that you can be. So I'm asking you to embrace your shadow, work with it. When you feel disharmony in your life, ask your shadow, hey, what's going on? What can I do to better myself? Do I need to put in boundaries? Do I need to, take some time out for myself, just for self-care moments? And if in the moment you have a trigger or you have an experience and you can't work with the shadow in that moment, because that happens, it really does, remind yourself later. Give yourself a text message. Set an appointment for later for yourself to say, hey, I need a journal about this. Hey, I need to work through this. Hey, I need to do creative expression. Hey, I need to do a meditation about this. I understand that you can't always do it in the moment, but you can always do it later. And if you forget to do it later, when it comes up again to you, give yourself the chance to actually pay attention to it, because shadow work is an ongoing thing. Something's always going to happen. We're always going to get disappointed by something. Something's just going to aggravate us. We're going to feel impatient. Unless you live in a perfect world, which good luck with that one, there's always going to be things that are going to affect us in an emotional way, whether it be disappointment, hurt, pain, discomfort. Your shadow's always going to hold that for you, so you can work through it, so you can process it, so you can harmonize yourself, so you, no matter what happens in your life, you have less of it. Eventually, your shadow and you will become one, and that is what we all ultimately work for, is unity, oneness, wholeness. But I'm not gonna lie, that is what the gurus are at, and I would love to think myself, as doing shadow work as many years as I have, that I've accomplished that, but even I haven't accomplished that, and I've honestly been doing shadow work actively for over 10 years. Maybe closer to 15, to be honest. But it is what it is. So understand that this is going to be something that's not just one and done. It's a lifelong thing, but it's always there for you. It's always there to help you, love you, and help you grow. Now it's your turn. What part of your shadow are you excited to explore? Go ahead in the comments, let me know below exactly what it is that you're going to start doing in order to work with your shadow first. If you're ready to go deeper into shadow work, hit that subscribe button and start your journey in your transformation. If you're looking for a starting point on doing shadow work, here's a video on journaling that's going to help you out a lot.